You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King with an occasional focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about all things that serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com, and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is Tiny. How's it going, Tiny?
Hi. Good.
Hi. Good. I don't know why I repeated exactly what you said. I also skipped over an important part of the intro here. If you would like to support what we do here, we have this podcast and two others. If you would like to support us, you can go to Patreon and become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where we are releasing regular content for our Patreon supporters. At the $1 per month level, you get exclusive B-roll episodes recorded specifically for Patreon. At $2 per month, you get that, plus TV review and reaction episodes. I just wrapped up a weekly review series on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier at the $2 level. And at the $5 a month level, you get all of that plus movie commentary tracks and immediate reviews. I just released a commentary track for Danny Boyle's Sunshine. This year, I'm kind of going through my top 25 movies of all time list and just doing commentary tracks, as well as monthly commentary tracks for Stephen King adaptations. So I've done It Chapter 2, In the Tall Grass, The Shining, Doctor Sleep. All of that commentary tracks are instantly accessible to you if you pledge $5 a month on Patreon. And finally, if you pledge $10 a month, you get all of that plus early access to podcast episodes and previously unreleased content. Again, that's at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay, whew. So Tiny.
Yes.
Once again, how's it going?
Good.
Nice.
You have been super regular about posting, because this
annoyingly so, I'm
right.
sure.
This is your 18th recording of the month?
Pretty much, yes.
It's old enough to vote, am I right?
Right, it's old enough to serve the country.
Trump train.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no. Yeah, so I'm looking at my calendar. In the last month, we're recording this April 27th. In the last month, I have recorded both on main podcast feeds and Patreon. I've recorded 17. 17 recordings. 3 of those are not going to be posted until next month. So coming up on the Patreon feed at the $2 level, I have a complete series review of Superstore, and a season 1 review of Peacock's Rutherford Falls.
Wow.
So yeah. So
you are a recording fool.
I sure am, and I really hope that no one is as annoyed with me as I am with myself. So yeah. Anyway, check it out. Patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And like, it's really great because like it pays us and pays me, and like the money goes toward paying the fees. Like each month, all 3 podcasts have fees to, host the podcast online. So those go toward that. And also, I just spent a shit ton of money upgrading the equipment. So
yeah.
I am in the black.
Red.
Yeah, I'm in the red.
Yeah.
And I just got my tax refund today, and I'm thinking like, oh, I could also get like this thing here, and can I get this?
Of course you are.
I know. Yeah,
I'd say you got a pretty sweet ass setup right now.
I do. There are a couple of things I want to do to like finalize it, but not anything I need to do like immediately. Just basically get a 4th of these and these and these, just so I can have all the inputs and everything.
Right.
But also, I mean, with the pandemic kind of winding to a close, fingers crossed, the prospect of doing more field recording and film festival recording and stuff, and like press junkets for film festivals,
right,
has me thinking like, okay, I need more toys for the mobile setup that I have. So anyway,
yeah, I get it.
Yep. So anyway, hi, I almost called you guys Patreon. You guys are not Patreon. You guys are Tower Junkies fans. Okay, this is off to a terrible start. So today on the podcast, we're going to be reviewing the 2021 release from Hard Case Crime of Stephen King's newest novel, Later, which came out under Hard Case Crime Publications. It was released March 2nd, 2021. And I don't really have any Stephen King news, but we'll go ahead and do some check-ins. Do you have any check-ins, Tiny?
I kind of don't. I downloaded a book
Okay.
that I got on Audible that is a Stephen King book,
Mm-hmm.
but I haven't started reading it yet. And it's something we're going to record about.
Oh, nice.
Do you know what it is?
I don't know. It could be on some kind of subject, I'm sure. It could be the full title could be, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, on writing, and then the subtitle could be something that has a word that I'm very self-conscious about mispronouncing. So on writing, a meme wire of the craft. I don't know.
It's actually on writing.
Oh, okay.
RIDING. It's all about
okay.
roller coasters and how Stephen King is
Nice.
obsessed with them. And
Nice. How would you feel about a Stephen King themed theme park?
dude,
Nice.
that would kill.
Christine bumper cars.
Oh god, yeah. You could do so many things.
Yeah. Playing the monorail, like going through the whole park.
Totally.
Yes.
Pennywise's House of Horrors or something.
Yes.
Like a House of Mirrors type thing, but all Pennywise.
Yes. And then every time you go in, you see a kid just get fucking destroyed, like in It Chapter 2.
Totally.
Yes.
Cujo's Dog Park. You can
Don't-
bring your dog and just leave it there. I don't know. That's not really a ride or entertaining at all,
Right.
but
Oh, that would be great.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
So anyway, so on writing, I need to listen to that too.
Mhm.
Because I think we're gonna hopefully have a guest on for that, a
Yes.
returning guest, returning champion, Mike White.
Mhm.
So stay tuned for that. But so you have no other check-ins or anything? You haven't made any purchases or anything?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
What have I done? I honestly don't know if I have that many check-ins or anything. Except for, I think I already talked about it. I think I did already talk about buying Storm of the Century.
You did, because I
Yeah.
remember seeing it.
Yes.
You bought a physical copy, right?
I did. I bought the
Yeah.
screenplay because that's how it was released, and the DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
Okay.
looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't Tim Daly in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any other check-ins or anything.
Yeah.
So Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Totes
Anyway.
profesh.
Yeah.
Well, we've been very obsessive viewer minded lately.
We really have been. We have been posting a lot on Obsessive Viewer.
Yeah.
But should we, before we get into the actual discussion and everything,
Mhm.
I do want to say last time on the podcast I did start a new segment called the Tower Junkies podcast Ka-Tet Corner. I think that's what it was called.
Okay.
So it's any time that we record an episode, I kind of want to spotlight a Stephen King themed podcast that I've been listening to. Last time, I think it was the Stand podcast that I gave a shout out to, but this time I want to give a shout out to The Year of Underrated Stephen King. Just to read the description, this podcast analyzes Stephen King's lesser known novels and short stories in depth and explores why Stephen King is the greatest fiction writer alive. Applying what the host teaches her fiction students, in this podcast, we will examine strong writing, storytelling principles, genre, literary analysis, and Stephen King universe nerdery. So the Year of Underrated Stephen King, they just celebrated their first year anniversary. And I'm really liking that podcast.
Nice.
Kim C, the host, she is incredibly thorough. She has I kind of squeed with excitement when I saw when she posted fairly recently her episode about the gunslinger.
Nice.
She has not read any Dark Tower books or anything. And like her episode of the gunslinger, I mean, it was like an hour and 45-minute episode. which is pretty irregular for her. But man, that dug so deep into it. It was phenomenal. I highly recommend checking out The Year of Underrated Stephen King.
Nice.
And follow that show on Twitter at underratedskpod on Twitter and Instagram. So yeah. Yeah, so I forgot. Crap, the news. This is the news that I should have allocated for this. So we'll get into a news segment. This episode is off to just a phenomenal start. Bear with us, guys. We have not recorded a Tower Junkies in a little while. So the big news that hit recently is that June 4th, 2021, we'll see the series premiere of Apple TV Plus's Lisey's Story adaptation.
Yeah.
It is going to be, I think, an 8-part miniseries, airing on Apple TV Plus. The first 2 episodes are gonna premiere on June 4th, and then it's gonna go week to week for the rest of the 6 episodes after that. Yeah, Lisey's Story. I'm super excited for this. Julianne Moore is going to be in it. Dane DeHaan, Joan Allen, Sung Kang, Clive Owen. All episodes are going to be directed by Pablo Larraín, who did, let's see, that movie Jackie and some other stuff. But every episode is written by Stephen King.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so I'm excited for us to read Lisey's Story.
I've never read it.
And me neither. And then get into it and then watch the show.
I like that cast. Clive Owen, Dane DeHaan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's exciting.
Oh yeah. Me too. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
So that's coming June 4th, and we will probably be reviewing it in August. But mostly joking there,
right.
But given our track record, we'll see. So, okay, with all of that preamble out of the way, today on the podcast, we're going to be reviewing Stephen King's latest novel, Later, which, as I said, was published March 2nd by Hard Case Crime. And as we normally do, we're going to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. So let's just dive into the non-spoiler review. I'm going to go ahead and read the plot summary, courtesy of StephenKing.com. The son of a struggling single mother, Jamie Conklin just wants an ordinary childhood. But Jamie is no ordinary child. Born with an unnatural ability his mom urges him to keep secret, Jamie can see what no one else can see and learn what no one else can learn. But the cost of using this ability is higher than Jamie can imagine, as he discovers when an NYPD detective draws him into the pursuit of a killer who has threatened to strike from beyond the grave. Okay, so, that's Later, and we're going to be talking about it. Hard Case Crime, non-spoiler thoughts. Tiny, what did you think in broad non-spoiler terms of Later, champ?
I kind of surprisingly like this a lot. I
Nice.
say surprisingly because I just didn't really go into it with any knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm just going to start listening to it. I didn't even really know what it's about.
Nice.
And I think my favorite part of it is actually the reading performance.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of my top, my favorite reading performances of any audiobook I've ever listened to.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
it was read by an actor named Seth Numrich, or Numrich. I'm not sure how I pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
He's most famous, I guess, for being in that show Turn, which was on A&E?
AMC, I think.
AMC, okay. I watched a little bit of that show. It was okay. My wife watched all of it, but I think that's his most famous credit. But he did such a good job with this. I think he really, really characterized, gave each character a very unique voice, and you could tell them all apart, really well. Especially the two female leads.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did such a great job with them. And then I think he just added this, with his inflection and his voice acting, really added this innocence to Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
That's so tenuous throughout this story. It was just really impressive. That was my favorite part of the whole audiobook, was just his performance was so good.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I I when it was released on March 2nd, I don't know how it came to be, how this came to pass, but I was like without an Audible credit like for a couple of days. Like my next credit was going to come like a couple of days after the publication date. And I'm like, well, I already
You were jonesing really bad.
I was just really just jonesing for it. But I was just like, I'm gonna buy the book anyway, so for my collection. So I had pre-ordered the paperback, and the paperback arrived March 2nd from Amazon. And so I think I mentioned this before on the podcast and on Patreon, but I just kind of opened it up and I was like, I'm going to be listening to the audiobook here in a couple of days. And I was just like, I'm just gonna kind of thumb through it, maybe read the first page, see how it is and everything. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like halfway through the book and I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay. And then I finished it like the next day. So this was by far the quickest in terms of publication to completion of reading and receiving and
me too, kind of. Like I didn't read it that fast, but I think and it's not very long. Was it 12 hours or something like that?
So it's like a 6.
Is it that short? Jeez.
Yeah, because I listened to the audiobook from beginning to end today while I worked.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. I listened to it in like 2 or 3 days, which is quick for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really liked it a lot.
Nice. Me too. And so I don't think it's necessarily a spoiler to say, because it is kind of early in the book, the kind of main hook of it is Jamie Conklin being a kid who can see the recently deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I really love about Stephen King when he writes things like high concept things like this is the way that he establishes like clear parameters for it. And I had this interesting kind of reaction when I was reading later for the first time. I was like, I kind of wondered if maybe it would make me want to revisit and give like a fresh read of Cell. Because Cell, what I remember of it is it's Stephen King doing a zombie story, but the zombies are like triggered by cell phone signals and they learn how to communicate, and then they travel in packs. Like there are all of these like different parameters surrounding it. It's not just like a zombie thing where you have a phone up to your ear, you turn into a zombie and you attack people. It's like it has all of these clear rules and everything. And Jamie Conklin's ability to see dead people is kind of that same way. It has these clear kind of parameters and rules attached to it that sometimes get a little broken and bendy as the story progresses. But what I love about it is that it is just this, it is Stephen King creating a scenario and creating a storyline that is just like it's playing in a sandbox that maybe he doesn't necessarily, well, I wouldn't say doesn't necessarily do too often, but like he is setting like, okay, let's do the Sixth Sense kind of thing where he sees dead people, but how does he see dead people? Okay, and then how can he communicate with them? Like what are the rules here and everything? I don't know. I just like the structure of it. How'd you feel about the kind of conceit of Jamie's ability?
In the words of Tony Stark in Infinity War, why would you do that? No, that's such a weird connection to make. The book Cell this. Like, that's
what you were saying.
That's what I was saying. Okay. Like, why would you do that? That's so random. First of all, why would you make that connection? Secondly, why would you revisit Cell?
Yes.
I'm kidding.
We will eventually. We will eventually.
Right. I know. That's why I say kind of. No, but I totally agree. And I think what's cool is the premise is that this kid sees the recently deceased, but he puts his own kind of spin on it. And there's this, it's not a total ripoff, I'm sure he was inspired by The Sixth Sense, but he puts his own spin on it. And what's cool is that the story is like, a bunch of the plot obviously is driven by that, but it's so in the background because the focus of the story is really what Jamie's going through, and like the relationship with his mom, the relationship with his mom's girlfriend, and like it's so his ability is so ancillary to everything else, and it's also really interesting because it's he keeps saying this is a horror story,
right?
Or he says it a few times at least.
Yeah,
and it's funny because the horror has nothing to do with his ability to see dead people,
right? Yeah,
which is, I mean, really, it's not. Not to spoil anything, but it's the conflict. It has nothing. It's not because he can see dead people. It's something totally different. And that's what's so clever about Stephen King's writing is that he presents this thing that's like, oh, this is obviously in his wheelhouse. It's horror. A kid sees dead people. That's going to be the crux of this. But he kind of switches it to something else, and it becomes this totally different story. Or it becomes so less reliant on the supernatural aspect of the story.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Oh, yeah. It is. It's something that is just kind of set up and then used to drive the story of this kid and his single mother, kind of just surviving in the aftermath of like the market crash of 2008 and getting back on their feet and everything, and his mother's troublesome relationship with a detective. It kind of just encompasses what Stephen King does extraordinarily well in creating these character-focused stories amidst this supernatural kind of conceit and playground that he sets up. And there are moments of pure horror that are terrifying, and the description of them, like the vividness of the description of some of the looks of some of the ghosts that he sees is really just spectacular descriptions, in my opinion. But the kind of the thing that I latched onto the most in this story is the Jamie Conklin kind of growth throughout the story. And in particular, this is a story that takes place over, I mean, it begins with Jamie as early, like there's a flashback of him as early as 6 years old. And then by the end of the story, he's like 15. And so we have this just span of time of like 9 years, just following this kid. And what I love about it, and it's something that's evident with The Institute and obviously other Stephen King books, but most recently The Institute. But Stephen King has such an ear for writing children characters, and in particular, writing precocious children. Who are very aware of their feelings and everything. How do you feel about the Jamie Conklin character as a whole?
I was going to say the same thing, actually. That totally jumped out to me. He's such a... It's funny because I used the word innocence earlier, and he definitely is that, for sure. He's kind of privileged, his mom's kind of loaded, his family's kind of loaded to an extent.
Yeah.
But he's also very witty and like sort of wise beyond his years. He's an intelligent kid. And I think it's because he can fucking see dead people.
Right.
And they don't have any filter, and so they just tell him all this shit that he's really not ready to hear as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never really connected his kind of just precocious nature and this kind of older than his years kind of wisdom and wisecracking as a byproduct of his supernatural ability. I just thought that he's just kind of a wise ass kid who actually knows how he feels and can communicate it as opposed to internalize it.
Yeah. Well, and it's expressed really well in the setup because there's the opening scene is sort of the opening scene when he and his mother come home, and their neighbor, his wife had just passed away, and they're talking to their neighbor, and the kid can see, Jamie can see the dead woman right there next to them. And she says something along the lines of, he'll probably be having lunch with so-and-so within the next couple weeks or whatever.
Right.
Implying that, she thinks he's always had a crush on this woman and that he's going to move on really quickly. And Jamie doesn't understand that, but he's curious about it, and he can't quite connect the dots. But I think he can... It makes him curious, and I think it again makes him wise beyond his years, that he's hearing all these things that are out of context because of how young he is, and he doesn't have experience with relationships and sex and adult things,
Yeah.
But it's laid out really well in that first episode, or that first opening scene, if you will.
Right. And so I went into the book not knowing exactly what it was about, like you said. But as soon as it was revealed that she was dead and he could see dead people, I'm like, okay. Like, I had a moment where I was like, just amazed by it, because I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Like, I didn't realize that this is what Stephen King was doing with this, with this story. Like, let's go. I'm hooked in. Did you have did you have any reaction like that, or was it, how'd you react to the revelation that he could see dead people?
Yeah, that jumped out pretty quick. I mean, that hooked me in pretty quickly as well. And like I said, I listened to the whole thing in a couple of days. And even though it's short, that's still quick for me to listen to something that quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I was hooked right from the get-go. And again, I think it's just the characters. We talk about that so much because it's just such an important part of his writing. The characters are so relatable and well-rounded. I
agree. And also, he has this penchant for filtering. Like, we talk a lot about how he is so good at describing and writing from the perspective of everyday America and kind of flyover country and like just Americana and everything through like a horror prism. But something that I've noticed since like Mr. Mercedes and the Bill Hodges trilogy is that he has such an eye for weaving in, maybe it's because I'm more conscious of like, American culture and the economy, but he has such a penchant for weaving in economic hardships and making that be kind of an important part of the storytelling that he does. Like with the Bill Hodges trilogy, like the Mr. Mercedes, opening like piece of violence is a Mercedes being driven into a crowd of people at a like job fair, or just like they're down on their luck and they're looking for work because of the economy is in the toilet. And then at least the second book kind of has like tangential relations to like a family that had a member that was at that location at part of that tragedy. And so here in later, we have Jamie Conklin and his mother being victims of a Ponzi scheme and just kind of the bottom falling out of their financial financial place. Stability. Yeah. Completely falling apart as a result of the 2008 crash and everything. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Do you kind of, does that resonate with you in any meaningful way?
It definitely does, because it's just interesting to see him weave those things into his stories, because it just, I guess it further grounds them, because, most of the people who are going to be reading this book have memories from the 2008 crash. Mm-hmm. Most of the people reading this book are going to know who Bernie Madoff was and what that was like for a lot of people losing their money. And so weaving both of those things together into a point of conflict for these characters and controversy for the characters is just clever. And it's funny because like those things happened, 12, 15 years ago.
Right.
It's not like they're super recent, but it's not like he wrote this during the, the big stock market crash in 1929 or whatever. It's something that was relevant, but not super recent. I don't know. It was just an interesting choice to make, to weave those things together and to make that part of the story. Again, it's just another aspect of him grounding his stories and making them relatable.
Yeah. And another kind of aspect to that, and it's something that I've long admired Stephen King for, for him doing this, is the way that something I admire about his writing is that he is so in tune with pop culture as well.
Yeah.
And so like he'll throw out these references that just ground it into such a like it's a relatability to the characters and everything. Like something simple as Jamie's mother telling him that he can stay up for being good at a funeral. He can stay up late and watch an episode of Torchwood. And it's like Torchwood, that's somewhat obscure in terms of pop culture. I mean, it's just a Doctor Who spinoff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like just those little things, those little pieces here and there, because he's very much a fan of pop culture. And I think that really informs his writing in a really fun way. That really kind of brings home the authenticity of it when he's writing about these stories that are completely bonkers crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. So the story kind of goes to some particular paths, down some particular paths, that we'll talk more in detail in spoilers, but, I don't want to talk about how it kind of references some other stuff. There are a couple of big references that I want to point out in spoilers, but kind of overall thoughts. How did you feel about the way that the story progressed, and kind of without going into spoilers, how did you feel about the climax of the story?
Yeah, I was kind of expecting this to be, about the horror, or the conflict was going to be the fact that he can see dead people, and that's going to lead to, him in some kind of conflict with a dead person or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It felt like that was going to be the main source of conflict, but really it was because there are other characters who are, evil, kind of
Mm-hmm.
evil and selfish and villainous, really,
And opportunistic.
Opportunistic, yeah, that's a good way to put it. But yeah, that it was just cool to see that. It was sort of, I think it kind of throws the reader for a loop, so that you're not getting something that's so expected. It's a little bit off the wall, or I didn't necessarily see it coming. Where the conflict was going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. But and yeah, I really like the way it ended. There was a very satisfying moment for the main character at the end. That wasn't overdone. It was pretty. Again, it was just really satisfying.
Okay.
It wasn't like some major thing that the character was focused on throughout the whole story, but it's something that maybe we had wondered about, as the readers had wondered about, something he'd wondered about throughout his life, but it just kind of happened to present itself to him, and
you said
really
that's
nice.
Really satisfying?
It was really satisfying. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. We're gonna have to talk about that in spoilers, because I'm very that'll be
kind of
fun.
dancing around it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, kind of overall thoughts on later. How does this rank in your top 19? Does it break the top 19, or is this just a breezy, fun thriller?
I think it's close. I think it's close to being a top 19.
Oh, nice.
It's really good. I have to look at my list a little closer, but I think for now I'm going to leave it out. But I could see myself listening to this again, or reading it again, and possibly putting it on the list. We'll see.
Sweet. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but Stephen King has had 2 hard case crime novels released previous to this. They have no relation to each other. They're just, the Hard Case Crime Publications is just what published it. And they kind of specialize in these pulp paperback editions, short novels. So he previously did Joyland and The Colorado Kid through Hard Case Crime. Have you read either of those?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I've read Joyland, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually, but I haven't read it since 2013. So I want us to go back and read those and kind of come back and review them, but we will do that all in due time.
Definitely.
For overall thoughts from me, I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it's kind of a brisk, breezy thriller that really kind of plays to some of Stephen King's strengths as in terms of his writing and kind of the shorter form writing, because this is like a quick 200, 300 page book, and it moves just as quick. As soon as we're introduced to certain elements and certain characters, he does give them proper time to develop and everything, but the plot moves it along very briskly, very quickly. I listened to this audiobook, having read the physical copy a month ago. I listened to it all in one sitting today at work, and like it's it's just a super fun, pulpy thriller with some supernatural stuff and some fun references to other Stephen King works, which we'll get to in spoilers. I don't think it'll break my top 19, but it is something that I do see myself revisiting at some point, maybe with some kind of regularity, just because the quickness of and the briskness of the plot. It's a super quick read and a lot of fun to kind of get a good Stephen King fix in a pinch.
Totally.
So that's our non-spoiler review of Later. I'm going to go ahead and play some music to break up our spoiler discussion. If you want to, if you haven't read Later and don't want to be spoiled, I'm going to give you some time during this jingle to turn off the podcast, read it, come back and listen. So here we are with spoilers for Later. All right, and spoilers on for Later. So, Tiny, first thing I want to bring up is, we can go beat for beat, or we can go through the plot and everything, but the first thing I want to bring up is the Stephen King, references that he has.
Right.
So, when I first read this book, I got so excited when the Ritual of Chud is, referenced. And is an integral part of the plot.
Right.
In the audiobook, he pronounces it Chud, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about the Ritual of Chud in Later?
It was really cool. I think it was woven into the story really well. It felt natural, I guess, is the way to put it. Sometimes references like that, cross property references, can get a little cumbersome, I guess would be the word, or they seem out of place. But this one I think was woven really well into the story. You know, I think it made sense that like there's essentially this demon from who knows where who kind of took over the ghost of this guy or the soul of this guy, however the hell you want to describe it. It's up to the reader, really. I think it made sense, and it really, again, it just felt natural, and it was almost as satisfying as what happened in It.
Yeah.
Like, so cool. Like it was less, it was a little less acid trippy.
Right.
I'll put it that way.
And that,
much more lucid.
Right. And that's something that I found really interesting about it, is that it is much more, coherent.
Yeah.
In this. And I kind of wonder, and this isn't corroborated by anything, this is purely conjecture on my part, but I wonder if this is an example of Stephen King seeing an adaptation of his work and having it draw inspiration in his writing. So It Chapter 2 includes a version of the Ritual of Chud, and I kind of wonder if that made Stephen King think like, oh, you know what? It would be kind of neat if we did this. If I did this in the story. If I brought back the Ritual of Chud and I had like this there. Kind of the same thing that I thought when the I think the Institute came out, because I thought, well, I wonder if that was kind of due to the way that it depicted that the Dark Tower depicted Agul Siento. I think that's what it was. Blue Heaven in the movie, because it just had, you know, the Devar toy, bringing all the, you know, kids to break the beams and stuff. I wonder if that's what inspired him to make the Institute, which is about a group of kids brought together to, you know, clandestinely take out people.
Right.
And so I kind of wonder if that's a similar thing here, if that's something that like, oh, you know, he saw It Chapter 2 and then was like, you know, let me bring back Ritual of Chud.
Yeah, could be. Who knows what inspires him to do that? But,
yeah, I don't know.
It worked really well in this.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, again, to give credit to the voice actor, Seth something. I forget his last name. I had it below my phone. Seth, the voice acting that he did for that possessed ghost of that the bomber guy or whatever, was like really scary. Yeah, that was some talented voice acting.
Very, very creepy. The tone is fantastic.
Yeah, like when he said, "I don't want to."
Yes,
was very, very effective.
Yeah, and let's talk about the rules and parameters of Jamie's powers. I really loved the conceit that, like, okay, well, he can speak to ghosts. They fade away after a certain amount of time, so that he only gets one chance to talk to them, and they have to tell him the truth. And that's kind of an interesting setup in the way that it comes into play throughout the story, like when his mother uses him to get the plot of the final Secret of Roanoke book, or the final Roanoke book from the author. Like that, those kind of conceits and that kind of thing is really good at character building, because as Jamie kind of professes throughout, like, or internalizes and talks about during that scene, they are using him. His mother's using him,
right,
and everything, but it's also for the greater good of, providing for their family and everything. But it's interesting the way that he kind of checks and notices the kind of selfishness of, like, his mother and of her girlfriend throughout it. I can't remember her name. The girlfriend's name.
I don't remember either.
Yeah.
Tia is the mom, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Gosh,
anyway.
What is her name? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it exemplifies again how he's experiencing things that no 10, 12-year-old boy should be experiencing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such a it's a really good book.
Totally.
By the way, it was Seth Numrich.
Numrich, that's right.
Yeah. And excuse me. So
is it Liz?
I think you might be right. Yes, Liz Dutton. I was trying to discreetly bring it up.
No idea how. I remember that.
Yeah. And I just listened to it today. So anyway, so that the parameters of it and the way that it kind of breaks those internal rules with the bomber and the kind of demon that possesses him and everything just makes for just really grounded, chilling, supernatural kind of entity throughout the book, which is kind of what the book needed,
right? To
have kind of a central thing, or a central kind of villain that wasn't over encumbering for the plot.
Yeah. Right.
But does come into play later in the book. How did you feel about Liz and her kind of descent into bringing Jamie along and using him and murdering that guy?
Yeah. That was kind of shocking that she took it to that extent. I was sort of wondering how far this was going to escalate. Like, I think when she basically takes Jamie for the first time, I think that was, while it was wrong, I think it's much easier to justify why she did it, even for someone who's not a dick and evil like we are,
right?
As compared to Liz, and so I think her doing that is forgivable in that first example, but even though it deeply traumatizes Jamie,
it was framed in a way, at least from her rationale for it, as being for the greater good to catch a bad guy.
Well, I think Jamie makes that rationale as well.
Yeah.
After a while, so I think there's a degree of justification for that first kidnapping. Let's call it what it is.
Right.
And so the second time, the stakes are just so much higher, and it's completely indefensible, obviously. And it's sad because she's kind of an in-between character, right? She more than just flirts with the line of what's wrong. She's in a bit of a gray area a lot of the time, and then she kind of, crosses the line and doing something wrong, but she's still a sympathetic character to an extent. But at this point, she's strung out, and she's basically kidnapping Jamie at gunpoint, and just for her own selfish reasons. And she's being incredibly selfish, and again, bordering on evil, I think is the right way to say it. But I was kind of shocked to see how far her character went, and then how dark that story got.
Yeah, having that kind of external villain while also having the kind of demon villain as well.
Right.
Was a really good kind of balance to strike, especially for such a short book.
Yeah, totally.
It just really kind of tightens up the plot a lot more for me.
Yeah.
and her kind of descent and her turn once he kind of recognizes her as being kind of really strung out. Also, there's a really cool reference to The Wire in that part too.
Yeah, right.
But when she's really strung out and she's kidnapping him and everything, that's where we've already known that she is kind of too far gone, because she is, at that point, she's been kicked off the force. She has pending legal charges against her and everything. And so we get the sense that she is a cornered predator, like an animal that's cornered and willing to do anything.
Desperate.
Yes. And
drug problem.
Yeah. And throughout that whole kind of journey to get to the guy's house, to the Marsden house, I kept thinking, like, I wonder, like, I was trying to be a little bit ahead of the book, but trying not to be too ahead of the book because I wanted to be surprised. But I was like, it would be really cool if his power, if a part of the plot includes like him seeing someone get killed and then that person, like her killing someone and then that person coming back to life and or the ghost. And then when it happened, I'm like, I was floored. Not because I was like, oh, I totally knew that. I know as much as Stephen King does. But it's mostly because I was just like, this is such a pivotal and intense moment for the story. And I was kind of just strapped in at that point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't make that connection, or I didn't have that prediction, I guess. But I was really blown away when she did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not even that. Like, the moment right before that, when he realizes that he's still alive, when he's like, he sees him like handcuffed to the bed and has like a mouth gag, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I might be thinking of something else, but anyway, he's like gagged and tied to the bed, and then he like winks or something, or he blinks his eye, and like that's when he's like, oh my god, he's still alive, and then she's just like, well, we can take care of that, boom, and then she, spoiler for the Shield, pilot episode, she Vic Mackeys him, but the Shield's so good, anyway, and then kind of Interestingly enough, I was kind of, after that point, both times I read it, I was kind of like, at that point, I was like, okay, the book is kind of reached its apex, and the resulting stuff that happens, like her death and his battle with the entity and everything, kind of felt like a little bit superfluous in the grand scheme of things. How'd you feel about the climax in the stairs and everything?
It was effective for me. I thought it was really shocking, and I think that was I can't remember how many times he says it, but he says several times, "This is a horror story."
Right.
And I think that was like the point of the most horror, because he also talks about how he says throughout the story and times when he's with Liz, he's like, this is one of those moments where I like Liz, or this is one of the reasons why I like Liz. And so he has some affection for her at some point, and he has to watch her get, murdered by this entity that also wants to murder him and has ill will towards him. That's where I think the true deepest horror of the story really rears its head. And so for that reason, I thought it worked really well, and I liked it a lot. I didn't think it was like superfluous or anything. So I disagree a little bit, but but it was, I don't know. I kind of thought that maybe Liz was going to have a different ending. Maybe I figured she was going to die, but I didn't necessarily see that coming, that he was going to call on the demon to do it, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't really have any kind of theories up until that point or not. Yeah. So,
and I thought the another part of that, the climax, was when they found the photos in the safe room.
Oh yeah,
from the gangster guy who basically killed a girl for pleasure, essentially, and was doing horrible things. It very much gave me flashes of the movie 8mm.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that.
Which is a movie that I love to hate, kind of, or hate to love, I guess, because it's so disturbing and hard to watch, but it's a brilliant movie. It made me think of that, and which I appreciate. I think that was a a level of darkness I wasn't expecting, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't make the 8mm connection because I've only seen that movie, I think, once.
Okay.
So it's not really a point of reference for me. But yeah, I totally get that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So to kind of wind down a little bit, I think, there was one other Stephen King-ism that I wanted to point out. Late in the book, Jamie talks to his mother and she says something about reading or something about how he needs to go read something or something like that. Or he's going to go travel somewhere and then she says like, well, how are you going to keep up with your studies or whatever, read or whatever. But anyway, and then he says the famous Stephen King quote, books are a uniquely portable magic, which is a quote that is very famous around the meme-averse. I can't believe I just said that word. And it's attributed to Stephen King. And I kind of like the cheekiness of that, where he says, like, books are a uniquely portable magic. I read that somewhere. But yeah, so I just wanted to point that out.
Nice.
But to kind of wind down, let's talk about the final pages of this book. The revelation, the kind of reveal at the end that his uncle was his father.
Right.
I didn't like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, both times I read it, I just kind of felt like I kind of softened up to it a little bit in the second reading of it, but that first one I was just like, this is just not satisfying to me. It's kind of it felt like it came completely out of left field, and I don't think it was properly I don't think it was properly seeded throughout the rest of the story. For my taste, I just felt like it was just like kind of a little like a swing for the fences for just completely crazy, kind of strange, taboo, incestuous plot development that I didn't get any read of that from like his mother. Like I didn't think there was anything in his mother's character, the way she was written, to kind of seed that level of shame or secrecy surrounding it. So in the non-spoiler, you kind of seemed to favor it and everything. So how did you feel about the incest stuff?
I guess I just really didn't see it coming. And that surprise or that shock was effective for me.
Okay.
And I also liked the subtlety of it because Jamie didn't get any details as to like, well, were you guys drunk? Were you depressed?
Right.
Like, what the hell? How did this happen? And he was sort of okay with that. He was like, I'm just going to accept this for what it is. And I'm not, he doesn't really judge. I don't think he doesn't really judge his mom or his uncle for it.
Well, the way that that he does it is he kind of creates this narrative surrounding it. Like the only information he gets from his dead uncle is that he's his father.
Right.
And so he kind of, in the text, Jamie kind of posits that like, well, his grandparents died at this point and his mother came home and obviously they probably got really drunk. They were really, they were in mourning and everything. And maybe he came in and just sat on the bed to comfort her. And then comfort turns to something, to a different kind of comfort and everything. And then 9 months later, I was born and she was working for the literary agency or whatever, whatever. And then he's like, I don't know if any of that's true. Like, I don't know. That's just what I did. Because I do appreciate the way that he is like, the way that he explains that it's better to keep that in his head than to entertain the alternative. Like, was his mother raped by her older brother?
Yeah.
And everything. Like the questions that he left unanswered, I can understand that. So I don't know.
That's the one thing I wasn't crazy about it was that speculation that he came up with, that speculative story.
Oh, interesting.
It's not that I didn't like it. I just thought it was like, what would lead him to go down that road? But I think you're right. It's like that's an acceptable version of the story, or it's an acceptable lead up to that conclusion. Whereas the alternatives are not acceptable and are disturbing. And but part of me wonders, I think throughout a lot of the time throughout the book, whenever his mom references the uncle, it's usually in kind of a negative context. But I think it's sort of framed because it's framed that she feels that way because of the whole Ponzi scheme thing.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's something else there.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
And I think that kind of plays into how I feel like it wasn't seeded well enough, because my kind of read of that negativity toward him throughout it, I felt that was more, yes, due to the kind of Ponzi scheme thing, but also I kind of read it as, him being a burden on them because of his Alzheimer's and having to have him in a facility and everything.
Yeah.
So it didn't really work for me all that well.
That's fair. I totally get that. I don't think it was entirely necessary.
Yeah.
For the story, but I did think it was interesting, and I think the subtlety of it just intrigued me, and the mystery of it intrigued me, and so I was kind of into it. So
yeah, that's fair.
That's me. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And do we really have anything else to say about later?
Not really, other than I was surprised at how much I liked it.
Yeah, me too. Not that I was expecting not to like it or anything, but I did kind of think that it would be... I wasn't expecting it to be as rich as it was, because I kind of expected it to be just a kind of 300-page little kind of Pulp Fiction kind of thing. And it was good. It was really good.
Totally.
So yeah, like we said, probably not on our top 19s or anything, but still a very solid entry in Stephen King's bibliography. And I think that's our review of Later.
Yeah.
Yeah, pizza is on the table. Pizza Roll, the official mascot of Obsessive Viewer Podcast, and she's moving my mic.
Joining the podcast.
Yes. So anyway, I forgot to mention at the top of this episode that we do have a subreddit that I created 5 years ago for Obsessive Viewer. And I think what I'm going to start doing is posting the links to the podcast episodes, just in case anyone wants to kind of have a centralized place to comment on the episode or share their thoughts and everything. Any way you want to contact us is fine, but that's just another avenue for it. So subscribe to our subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer. Really, I just have links to episodes on there. So comment on the episodes if you want. Yeah.
You don't have any like insider drops?
I don't know. There's no Q drops or anything.
What would be our letter?
Anything.
The alphabet for our insider.
O. Just obsessive. I'm all about branding.
Nice.
Or should I say that a programmer in the Philippines is all about branding? I don't know. Anyway, check out Obsessive Viewer. We reviewed Q Into the Storm.
Hello, Patriots.
Yeah, Patriots. I love that. Nice. Check out our QTube channel. So anyway, what should we do next time, Tiny?
Oh boy. I think. Well, I don't know. What should we do next time? I think we might be doing our episode with Mike White.
Yes.
That might be the next thing we do. Yeah.
We will be doing On Writing with Mike White of As Good As It Gets and The Obsessive Viewer.
Yeah.
But I also want you and I, to do our top 19 adaptations.
Yeah, we do need to do that.
We do need to do that, mostly because that's something that we don't need to read a book for.
Right.
And we can kind of pump it out. And also we need to do our Apt People thing for release on June 21st.
I was going to say I couldn't remember if that was the summer one or not.
Yes. Hope Springs Eternal in the Shawshank and Summer of Corruption.
Is that right?
I think.
I thought Stand By Me was
I think Stand By Me is Fall of Innocence.
Or the Body. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought The Body was, because I've never read it or never seen the movie. Mm-hmm. I thought it took place over the summer, so I thought that's maybe.
No, that's fall.
It's fall. Okay, yeah. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay,
well. Labor Day weekend.
Cool.
Yep. So we'll have something coming up on the podcast. Once again, podcast Ka-Tet Corner check out The Year of Underrated Stephen King. Phenomenal podcast that goes into much more depth than we do.
I downloaded some of the episodes while we were
nice.
recording, so I'm gonna listen to them. Yeah.
Sweet. So check that out, and check out our subreddit, and check out our other podcasts, Anthology and Obsessive Viewer. And I think that'll do it for this episode. Also, final thing. My fingers caught. Just gonna kind of play us out. Anyway, final thing. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for exclusive content released regularly. And having said that, thank you so much for listening, and long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. Yeah, Fecus said that because he got the Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
But he's like, I jokingly, quote unquote, said like, hey, can I borrow your badge and your gun and like your uniform or whatever, just so I can get it. And then he's like, honestly, they never once asked me for any kind of proof of my employment or anything.
No shit.
So it's like all the honor system, I guess.
Yeah.
So Special Agent Matt Hurt is going to be getting the vaccine.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I also jokingly told him that I am a first responder when it comes to commenting on pop culture through podcasts. So,
right.
I mean,
right.
Even though we notoriously are not the first responders on it, we take our time.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yep. So anyway, Patreon.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to towerjunkiespod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod and follow us on Twitter at towerjunkiespod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OVAnthologyPod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!